They say the water remembers. Not just the floods or the footprints left behind on wet stone, but names. Whispers. The moment you hesitated at the bend and felt eyes, not wind, on your back. Some trails guide you forward. But the Narrows, it pulls you in. And when it lets go, you're not always who you were. Zion National Park rises out of the southern Utah desert like a cathedral of red stone and wind. The canyons here aren't carved by violence. They're shaped by patience. The Narrows, in particular, is a place that doesn't announce itself. It waits. You enter not with a gate, but with a step into cold, moving water. The Virgin River winds through the tight slot canyon, narrowing the path until walls rise hundreds of feet on either side, barely 10 feet apart in places. Light filters down in fractured shafts, and sound doesn't travel the way you expect. Voices bounce, repeat, then vanish. Sometimes they come back altered. Locals speak of it with a reverence that borders on superstition. Not fear exactly, more a quiet wariness. One ranger put it this way: the Narrows doesn't care if you're a believer. It's older than that. It remembers things we forgot how to name. What it remembers varies. There are stories, whispered and inconsistent, of people hearing a second set of footsteps that perfectly mirrors their own. Not ahead, not behind, beside them, just beyond the edge of peripheral vision. The strange part is how those footsteps vanish the moment you stop, but return the second you begin again. Hikers chalk it up to echo, at first. Then they try it. They walk, stop, listen, and then they realize an echo doesn't pause first. It follows. One afternoon in early October, a guide named Caleb Trask was leading a photography group into the Narrows. It was late in the season, after the summer crowds had thinned. Fog was drifting low through the canyon mouth, clinging to the water's surface like breath that had nowhere else to go. At a spot known as Wall Street, a narrow passage where the canyon walls grow so close that the sky becomes a crack of pale light overhead, Caleb paused for a head count. 7, all accounted for. He remembers it like this: I turned around to move forward again, and one of the guys in the back said, "Where's the 8th?" Caleb froze. There were only 7 of us. The man looked confused. No, I saw someone right behind me. Black jacket. Put up. Just now. There was no 8th. They waited. Called out. Searched the area within the bend. But the fog made everything flat. Sounds didn't travel. Even the river seemed muted. Less like it was flowing and more like it was waiting. No one turned up. But the man who'd spoken, the one who saw the 8th, said nothing else the rest of the hike. That night, he emailed Caleb a single photo from the canyon. It was an out-of-focus shot of the group walking ahead. On the far left edge of the frame, partially obscured by rock, was a dark silhouette. No features, no movement, just there. When Caleb zoomed in, he noticed the stone beside the figure looked wet, but not from river splash. Well, like something had been resting against it too long, like skin pressed to sandstone. The figure never showed up in any of the other shots. These stories aren't uncommon, if you ask the right people. Old trail reports contain odd entries that don't make it into official logs. Mentions of lost time, of hikers turning up with no memory of the final mile, or speaking in clipped, off-kilter cadence, like their rhythm hadn't returned with them. But the stories go back much further than the National Park Service. The Paiute people, the original stewards of this land, have long told of spirits that dwell in places where the river disappears into stone. Spirits that don't chase or hunt, but echo. Mimicry, in their tradition, isn't a trick. It's a warning. It's the land reminding you, you are not the first to walk here. You are not the only. A tribal elder once said in an interview, when you hear your own name spoken from ahead on the trail, you must not follow. That is not you calling. Zion is a park full of stories. Most are printed on trail signs or retold in visitor centers. But the ones that stick with you are the quiet ones. The ones passed from ranger to ranger, not in training manuals, but over late-night radios or campfire shifts. You won't find signs that say don't hike alone in the Narrows. But they say it anyway. Not because of wildlife. Not because of the cold flash floods. But because some trails don't forget. They remember every footstep, every name whispered in a moment of fear, every breath taken just before you thought you were alone. And when the river rises, or the fog rolls low, those memories have a way of surfacing. Not loudly, just close enough to hear. Trevor Dunn didn't believe in any of that. He came for the fog, for the silence, for the perfect photograph. And what he left behind was something the Narrows still holds. Trevor Dunn was the kind of hiker who believed preparation made him immune to danger. An amateur photographer and environmental blogger from Phoenix, Trevor was known for venturing into under-photographed corners of the American Southwest, especially during off-season storms or rare weather events. His blog, Stillwater, Redstone, had a loyal audience. He wrote about landscapes with almost reverent detail. But in October 2013, during an early cold front that swept into Zion Canyon, Trevor made a decision that still echoes through ranger briefings today. He entered the Narrows, alone, against posted advisories, during a fog event. No one knows exactly when he stepped into the water. The last known footage of him came from a trail cam near the Temple of Sinawava at 6:43 a.m. He wore a black thermal jacket, chest waders, and carried a small waterproof backpack. Slung from his side, a Nikon D300 with a cracked lens filter he insisted gave his photos a soft bleed. He smiled as he passed the camera, even waved. And then he disappeared. The fog was thick that morning, thicker than any recent visitor accounts could recall. It settled low across the riverbed like ashfall. Rangers called it a temperature inversion event, where cold air becomes trapped in the canyon, holding moisture low against the water. From above, the canyon looked empty. From inside, it was another world entirely. Trevor's phone pinged its final GPS signal at 8:19 a.m., near a series of sharp bends in the Narrows called the Knees. These are slick-walled switchbacks where the water deepens, and the sandstone seems to lean inward with strange intent. The phone shut off minutes later. Low battery, likely. No distress signal was sent. But even without a call, people noticed his absence. He was expected to meet a friend, Cara Mercer, in Springdale by late afternoon. When he didn't respond by 5 p.m., she contacted the park rangers. Search teams mobilized quickly. Conditions were already deteriorating. For 3 days, they combed the canyon mouth, the side trails, the ridges above. Nothing. No body. No backpack. No camera. Just two things. A single boot, found pressed heel first into a soft sandbar that hadn't seen a footprint in years. And one photograph, uploaded to his blog hours before his phone died. The photo is beautiful at first glance, framed with the eye of someone who loved this land. A slow curve of water between smooth red canyon walls. Mist curling upward like steam from the river's breath. Texture, shadow, light, all balanced. But in the lower left corner, near the edge of a rock outcrop, is something else. A shape, upright, still, no color, no detail, just a dark, human-like outline. It's not Trevor's shadow. It's not a trick of light. It doesn't match the fog pattern. Some say it's just a smudge from his cracked lens. A water drop on the sensor. Others aren't so sure. In the week that followed Trevor's disappearance, 3 separate hiking parties reported the same thing. A set of wet footprints appearing alongside theirs. Barefoot, unshod, moving at the same pace, just off to the right. Each time, they'd pause, expecting to find someone behind them. No one. The prints would stop the moment they did. One family of 5 said the prints walked alongside their youngest child for nearly an hour. The boy never said a word. When asked about it later, he told a ranger. The man said he used to have a name, but the river took it. The ranger didn't write that part down, but he remembered it. Cara Mercer, Trevor's friend, returned to Zion the next spring. She carried with her a laminated photo of the canyon, the one from his blog, and posted it at the Canyon Junction Ranger Board with a handwritten message. If you see him, he might not know he's lost. She hiked the Narrows that day alone. Rangers let her go. They understood. Sort of. She reached Wall Street by early afternoon and returned by dusk. When asked if she saw anything unusual, she hesitated, then said, "The water didn't look like it wanted me there." She's never returned. Since 2013, hikers have claimed to hear something upstream, just around the next bend. Not a voice, not music, just a soft step, breaking water, again and again, always one turn ahead. Never closer, never farther, like a rhythm that wants to be followed. One ranger, who has since transferred out of the park, described it this way. It's not that Trevor died in the Narrows. It's that the Narrows kept what it wanted. The rest of us, were just visiting. Trevor's story isn't just a missing persons case now. It's part of the canyon. No warning sign bears his name. No stone marker stands where he vanished. But some nights, when the fog rolls low and the river stills, hikers say they see a black shape ahead, shoulders hunched, camera slung low. Walking. Not hurried. Not lost. Just returning. Always returning. But the Narrows doesn't always take. Sometimes it warns. And if you listen carefully, you might catch the pattern. 3 moments, 3 signs. A rule whispered in silence. Leave before the river learns your name. Some stories don't vanish with time. They get quieter, worn down like sandstone. And if you listen closely enough, they're still there, beneath the noise of the river, behind the rustle of leaves. A rhythm, a rule. The rangers call it the rule of 3. Not officially, of course. There's no mention of it in the safety pamphlets or trailhead kiosks. But those who've been here long enough, those who've walked deep into the Narrows and come back with something missing, know it's real. 3 warnings. 3 chances to leave. The first is cold water. Not just cold, but sudden. Icy. Rushing against your legs in a place where the temperature shouldn't drop so fast. A single, pulsing current out of nowhere, like a hand brushing past your knees. It moves against the river's natural flow. No rain upstream. No runoff. Just that flash of cold. It happens when you stop to rest. Tie your boot. Take a picture. And in that stillness, something brushes close and keeps moving. Those who feel it the first time and turn back almost never speak of it again. As if the canyon grants them silence in return for their departure. But most don't listen to one warning. The second is sound. Or more accurately, the lack of it. In a place like the Narrows, you get used to echoes. Your voice bouncing off the canyon walls. Your footsteps returning in layers. But sometimes, without warning, that echo dies. A shout falls flat. A name called into the bend doesn't return. Even the splash of your own feet seems wrong, like it's being swallowed. One hiker described it like this. It was as if my ears went underwater, but I hadn't moved. Like the canyon just closed its mouth. This is where most turn back. Not from fear, but from unease. That primal sense that something has shifted just outside your understanding. But those who press on, they face the third warning. A ranger named Eli Martinez, who worked Zion for over a decade, once shared a story during an off-season staff debrief. It wasn't part of the official meeting. It came after, when the room had thinned out and the coffee had gone cold. In 1992, he led a Boy Scout troop through the Narrows on a dry season hike. Clear skies. Good conditions. 12 kids, 2 adults. They made it past Wall Street by mid-afternoon and stopped for a snack break near a sheltered bend where the walls press in like hands cupped around the trail. That's when the first warning came. A sharp, sudden chill that surged up to their knees. One scout yelled. A few laughed. Eli didn't. The second came 10 minutes later. One of the adults called out to a boy lagging behind. No echo. Just dead air. Eli said his stomach turned. He told them to pack up. Head back. But one kid refused. A quiet boy named Jamie, who had barely spoken all day. He stood still in the river, staring upriver, eyes locked on something just beyond the next bend. Eli called his name. Jamie looked back and said, "There's someone up ahead." Waving. No one else saw it. No one else heard anything. Eli walked forward, put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "We're leaving." The boy looked confused, almost hurt. But he came. Eli never reported the incident. He couldn't explain it, and he didn't want to be pulled into something he couldn't prove. But years later, he returned to that same bend. Alone, just to check. He stayed 5 minutes before turning around. He doesn't speak of what he saw, only that he never went back again. The third warning is this. Your reflection moves when you don't, or it doesn't show up at all. It happens in shallow stretches where the water calms just enough to catch your shape. You look down and something is wrong. Your arm isn't where it should be. Your backpack strap disappears. You blink, and the image blinks back too late. One hiker, a woman named Lena who solo trekked the Narrows in 2018, described it in a forum post that was later deleted. I stopped at a still pool, maybe 20 feet wide. Perfectly clear. I could see my boots, my jacket. But when I raised my arm to fix my hood, the reflection didn't move. It just stared back. Then it smiled. I didn't. She turned around immediately. Got out before dusk. When asked why she deleted the post, she said, "It felt like leaving the door open. Patterns matter in folklore. And in the Narrows, Patterns don't just emerge, they warn. Cold current, dead echo, broken reflection. 3 signs, each one soft, subtle, easy to ignore, but each one marking a threshold. The canyon doesn't lurch. It doesn't scream. It invites. And like any old spirit, it follows rules older than ours. Give a warning, then another, then one more. After that, it takes. Some places offer protection through belief. Shrines, symbols, names passed down through generations. The Narrows doesn't want belief. It wants awareness. It wants you to notice the stillness, to feel the drop in temperature, to hear, or not hear, your own voice returning. And if you miss all 3, you were never listening to begin with. Eva Greene was listening. She came to study the canyon's silence, its language. But in the process, she found a place that didn't just reject words, it rejected identity. And what it gave back wasn't hers. Some names vanish from the records. Others are erased. Eva Greene was 26 years old when she came to Zion in the spring of 1976. A graduate student from Boston, she was conducting fieldwork for her thesis in linguistic anthropology, focusing on how landscapes inherit and reshape language over time. She arrived with a single backpack, a notepad wrapped in wax cloth, and a secondhand recorder with a faint hiss that never quite left its tapes. Her focus wasn't the trail names or mapped coordinates. It was the folk language, the whispered labels passed down from hiker to hiker, old Paiute terms that lingered in oral memory, and the strange, sometimes contradictory phrases scratched into backcountry logbooks. One phrase in particular had drawn her to Zion's Narrows, the place where names don't echo. She rented a small room in Springdale and spent 2 weeks interviewing rangers, locals, and elders of the nearby communities. They spoke of the Narrows with caution, not superstition, like it was something respected, not feared. But when she asked about the names, people grew quiet. Some claimed the Narrows had once held different trail markers, older ones, names that no longer appeared on maps. Others said it wasn't that the names had changed, but that they'd been forgotten. One old hiker, known only as Willard, told her, "It's not that you forget your way in there. It's that it forgets you were ever in it." Eva laughed politely, wrote it down, but she didn't really understand. Not yet. On May 11th, she entered the Narrows alone, just after sunrise. The day was calm, water levels low, visibility high. Rangers at the time remember her check-in clearly. Unusual, they said, for someone studying language to enter without a guide. She told them she wouldn't go far, but Eva didn't return. 3 days later, after her absence was noted, a search began. Her trail was easy to follow at first, standard prints in wet sand, moving north along the river path. But then nothing. No backpack, no recorder, no body, just her notebook. It was found halfway up a dry ledge, carefully tucked into a notch in the rock, protected from spray. Inside were field notes, interviews, sketches of petroglyphs. And then, the pages changed. The handwriting shifted, still hers, but uneven. The words slanted. She had written, "There is a stretch of the Narrows that refuses language. Voices thin out. Your name starts to sound foreign." I said Eva 3 times. It didn't come back once. The last page was different. The paper had been torn in half horizontally. Deep grooves cut into it with the pressure of her pen. Only one sentence remained, repeated 4 times. The stone whispered my name back to me, but it wasn't my voice. Then nothing. The official report called it an accidental drowning. Flash flood unlikely. Foul play, ruled out. But rangers who've read the notebook don't speak of it casually. One former search leader recalled a peculiar feeling near the ledge where the notebook was found. He described it like standing beside someone tall, but not being able to look up. Just knowing something was beside you, watching. That same ranger later requested transfer to Bryce Canyon. He left Zion within the month. Eva's file remains open, technically presumed deceased. But each spring, when the river thaws and the fog returns, hikers still report strange phenomena near the ledge. Faint voices, sometimes saying a name, sometimes yours. In 1998, a linguist named Professor Chandra Lin returned to Zion after reading about Eva's case in an obscure journal. She brought students, maps, and an old analog recorder. They hiked the Narrows in pairs, took audio samples from various points in the canyon. In one section, the playback became distorted, only in that location. They recorded the same phrase, over and over, Eva Greene, Eva Greene, Eva Greene. Each playback was different. Sometimes the voice echoed, sometimes it didn't. And once, just once, when they played it back, it said a different name. Not Eva, not Chandra, no one they recognized. The canyon, it seems, does not keep names. It reuses them, reshapes them, takes yours, leaves another. A ranger once described it like a tide. The Narrows washes things in and out. But sometimes, what comes back ain't what left. Some believe Eva found what she was looking for. A language too old for syntax, too quiet for ink. A place where sound travels one way, and memory does not follow. In a glass case at the Zion Human History Museum, her notebook is on display. Most visitors pass it without notice. It's worn, warped by time, its text fading beneath the reflection of overhead lights. But those who lean in, those who listen, swear they hear something faint behind the glass. Not sound exactly. A breath, maybe. A whisper of something trying to remember how to speak. And if you look long enough, some say you'll see a name written faintly along the torn edge of the final page. It's not Eva Greene. It's your name, already waiting. But Eva wasn't the only one to lose her voice in the Narrows. Others have heard their names called from ahead on the trail by voices they know. Voices long dead. And those who follow them sometimes don't come back alone. The deeper you go into the Narrows, the less the river feels like water. It feels like memory. Heavy, directionless, ancient, and somewhere beyond Wall Street, past the reaches of light and radio signal, is where the stories begin to shift from disappearances to something older. The locals call it the EchoWalker. No name, no face, just a presence, built from stories passed hand to hand, decade to decade. It isn't a ghost. It's a pattern, a presence that follows quietly, mimicking footsteps, repeating voices, calling out names not as threats, but as invitations. The earliest accounts date back to settler journals in the late 1800s. One from 1883, belonging to a man named Silas Greeley, tells of a narrow canyon near the Virgin River where one's own voice becomes confused, and the sound of my boot returned before I lifted it. He camped there one night and wrote of a soft cadence, pacing outside his tent, never stopping, never speeding up. He described it this way: I thought it a mountain lion at first, but it did not breathe, did not sniff, only walked. When I sat up, it sat. When I moved toward the flap, it did not retreat, but stood still, and the silence grew louder. Greeley left the canyon the next morning, never returned, but he wasn't the last to hear it. Over the years, rangers, backpackers, even scientists studying rock acoustics have come forward, always unofficially, with similar stories. Pacing steps, a voice that comes a second too late, footprints that match yours exactly until they don't. In 2007, a park volunteer named Marla Esposito led a geology workshop into the Narrows during early spring runoff. Conditions were safe. The river was low. The light filtered through just right. A good day. As the group paused to examine ripple marks in the canyon walls, Marla heard her name called. Soft. From ahead. The voice was unmistakable, her father's. He'd passed away 2 years prior. Lung cancer. She froze. The students kept chatting, but the voice came again. Marla. Gentle. Almost amused. Come see what I saw. She turned the corner. Fast. Nothing there. Just a narrowing corridor of stone, a few scattered rocks, and a thin slice of water curling around the bend. When she returned to the group, she didn't say anything. She didn't want to explain how her breath still felt like it belonged to someone else. But that night, alone in her tent, she heard it again. 3 soft knocks. Not at the flap, not on her cooler, but from beneath her cot. She left the next morning. Never worked in the park again. So what is the EchoWalker? Folklore doesn't define it as a being. Not in the way we imagine. It doesn't chase. Doesn't haunt. It waits. It returns. Some describe it as a voice detached from a body. Others say it borrows voices, a brother, a spouse, a child. Just enough to make you look. Just enough to make you follow. And once you do, you don't walk alone anymore. Your steps fall into rhythm with something else. And over time, you can't remember which of you was leading. An oral account recorded in the 1940s from a Paiute elder named Toi Kinash tells of a shadow that takes only what steps ahead. He said, when you walk in silence, it walks behind. When you pause, it stands beside. When you turn, it becomes the canyon wall. But if you answer it, it learns your shape. That phrase, "it learns your shape," has lingered in ranger culture. Quietly, one ranger keeps it etched inside his wristwatch. Not visible, just enough to remember. He says it's like a compass. If he ever hears someone call his name from ahead, he turns around and leaves. In 2015, two brothers from Nevada, Tyler and Drew Hammond, recorded audio while hiking the Narrows. They were experimenting with echo delay across various canyon widths. In one section near Orderville Canyon, they recorded Tyler speaking. "Drew? You behind me." Standard pause. Then his voice again, this time answering. "Yeah, right behind you." But when they played the audio back later that night in their hotel, they heard a third voice. Not Tyler, not Drew. A soft voice, same cadence, slightly behind the second reply. Repeating, "right behind you." Same words, same rhythm, slightly slower. Neither brother remembered saying it. They deleted the file the next day, but not before one of them whispered, "That didn't sound like us." Some think the EchoWalker isn't dangerous, just curious. A canyon-made echo trying to become human. A memory trying to walk itself back into the world. A voice without a body, waiting for one that listens too long. And perhaps that's what makes it more terrifying. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It doesn't chase. It paces. And it always sounds like someone you love. There's a stretch of the Narrows where signage disappears, where even the hand-painted mileage markers grow faint. In that place, some hikers have seen a figure walking just ahead. Black clothing, hood up, slight limp in the left foot. Never quite in focus. One man tried to catch up, picked up speed. He later told rangers, "Every time I got close, it slowed down. Like it was waiting. And when I stopped, it stopped. But it never looked back." The ranger asked what made him turn around. The man replied, "I realized my footsteps were echoing in the wrong direction." The EchoWalker doesn't appear in park maps or safety brochures. But every few years, a new version of the story surfaces. A voice, a step, a reflection. Always a little different. Always a little closer. Because that's the thing about echoes. They only exist if something hears them. There's a place deep in the Narrows where even echoes fail. A quiet basin where reflections don't behave like they should. Some call it the mirror pool. Others say it's not a reflection at all, but something waiting beneath. There's a quiet place deep in the Narrows where the canyon opens, not wide, but just enough to feel unnatural. The stone walls pull back, the river slows, and the light falls in still columns, like a cathedral left to silence. Hikers call it the reflection pool. Though that name doesn't appear on official maps, it's passed between seasoned travelers, often with a shrug, a joke, or something unspoken behind the eyes. You'll know it when you see it, they say, because the water doesn't reflect you back. Not properly. Not ever. Most rivers shimmer with distortion. They blur shapes, elongate shadows, but they still respond to movement. They flicker when you pass, tremble when you speak. Not here. In the reflection pool, the surface remains still, even when disturbed. Your stone throws, your splashes, your breath, they fall in, but the water barely notices. You look in expecting yourself, and you find something else. In 1994, two friends, David Moan and Gene Sato, came across the pool near the end of a 2-day hike. The water was glass smooth, tucked between curving stone like a hidden lens. Gene, a landscape painter, took a photo. David leaned over to refill his bottle. He paused, then slowly stood back up. When Gene asked what was wrong, David didn't answer. Just looked at the photo on her digital camera's preview screen. Then looked back at the pool. Then back at the photo. "There's someone standing next to me," he said. In the picture, there was a figure, shoulder height to David. No face, no color. Standing just behind the reflection, not beside him on the trail. Just the reflection. The photo was lost later that year during a hard drive crash. But Gene's paintings changed after that. All of them included reflections that didn't match their subjects. All of them silent. Rangers say that animals avoid the pool. No birds. No frogs. Not even the insects that usually skim river surfaces at dusk. Trail cameras set up facing the pool often glitch. Batteries die faster than normal. Audio records nothing but a low hum, as if the canyon itself is breathing. One ranger tried marking a rock with white chalk, drew a symbol, photographed it, then placed it at the water's edge. When he returned the next morning, the rock was still there. But the chalk was gone. Washed off. Maybe. Except the photo still showed the mark, clearly. And when he flipped the image upside down, the symbol was reversed, but not mirrored. It was rewritten, not reflected. He never returned to the site again. A backcountry guide named Amber Keller once led a small group through the Narrows in late September. A storm had passed days earlier, leaving strange fog patches and unusually high water lines. They paused at the pool to rest. One client, a man in his 40s, stared into the water without speaking. Amber asked if he was all right. He said, "My daughter's in there." Amber thought he was joking. She smiled. "I didn't know you had kids." "I don't. But she's there. She keeps waving." He didn't blink. When she looked into the pool, she saw only herself, clouded, distant, strange. Her mouth didn't move when she tilted her head. The reflection blinked twice. She told the group it was time to move on. The man resisted at first, then followed without another word. The next morning, she found a child's red hair ribbon tied to her backpack strap. She didn't know where it came from. She still keeps it in a drawer, folded, unmoving. Some believe the pool is not a reflection at all, but a window, a place where the canyon thins and something else watches from beneath. Not malicious, not benevolent, just watching, learning, mimicking, and sometimes waiting for an invitation. Because what makes this place unsettling isn't what you see. It's what the water refuses to show. Your eyes, your movement, your voice, all return slightly off. Like the canyon is trying to remember what it means to be human, and it's using you as a sketch. One hiker, Anna Lay, posted on a now-archived forum that she lost time at the pool. She'd entered the area around 4 p.m. based on GPS logs and had intended to camp just past it before nightfall. But her next GPS ping came at 7:26 p.m., a full 3 hours later. She was still at the pool, sitting cross-legged, shoes off, staring into the water. She didn't remember sitting, didn't remember waiting, didn't remember hearing anything. But in her left hand was a photo, one she didn't take. A Polaroid. It showed her, standing at the pool's edge. But she was alone on the trail. She knows she was. The person in the photo had her face. But it wasn't her expression. The smile was wrong. Like something trying too hard to remember what smiling looked like. Since then, more stories have emerged. Photos with blurred edges. Reflections that blink out of sync. Faces not seen in the group. One child, after visiting the pool with her family, refused to drink water for 3 days. When asked why, she whispered, "The girl in the river said if I drank, she'd come with me." Her parents laughed nervously, but she didn't. And in the back of the family's SUV, their dashcam recorded her saying, quietly, almost sadly, "She's already in my mouth." The reflection pool can't be avoided if you go far enough into the Narrows. But most don't go that far. And those who do, rarely go twice. It doesn't frighten in the way we expect. It doesn't chase. Doesn't scream. It simply offers your face back to you and waits to see what you'll do with it. Because when the canyon finally looks back, you have to wonder, which one of you is the reflection? Some hikers do make it out. They return with all their gear, their photos, their names. But something in their step has changed. They walk a half beat off. They flinch at mirrors. They say things that aren't theirs. Because sometimes, the walk back isn't yours at all. Most disappearances in Zion are final. A name scratched into a ranger log. A photograph pinned to a board. A trail marker with weather-worn flowers left by someone who never really accepted the answer. They were lost. But some do come back. They return from the Narrows with all their belongings. Dry clothes, packed gear, even clean boots. And yet, something doesn't return with them. Or worse, something new does. It starts small. A limp that wasn't there before. A backpack strap buckled on the wrong side. A hesitation when asked for your name. As if it takes just a second too long to remember. Most people ignore it. Say the hike was harder than expected. Say the water was colder. Say the silence got to them. But those who know what to look for see it immediately. A break in rhythm. A misalignment. They walk like they're not used to their own body. They blink too slowly. Smile too wide. Or don't smile at all, even when they try. In 2008, a man named Carl Johansson completed a solo Narrows hike in record time. No reported injuries. GPS logged his every movement. He passed through the reflection pool and kept going. Camped overnight past Big Springs. Returned in under 36 hours. He signed back in at the ranger post. His handwriting was neat, precise, but it wasn't the same as when he signed out. Not even close. Rangers chalked it up to exhaustion, cold hands, fatigue. But when his wife met him in Springdale, she took a step back before hugging him, said his voice was lower, that he hugged too tight. And when he kissed her cheek, she whispered, "That's not how you do it." A few days later, she called the park office, asked, carefully, whether anyone had ever come back wrong. She wouldn't explain, only said she didn't sleep well anymore. Her husband had started waking at 2:11 a.m. every night, standing by the window, facing the dark. He didn't speak, just breathed heavily, slow, measured, as if waiting for something outside to breathe back. She asked if he remembered what happened in the canyon. He said, "The walkout took longer than the walk-in." She reminded him it was the same trail. He smiled, gently, like someone repeating a gesture they saw in a photograph. Not if you take someone else's steps. She left him a month later. Never gave a reason. Just one final voicemail to the ranger she'd spoken with before. "I don't think he brought anything back. I think something followed him out." Stories like this are easy to dismiss. Too much sun, not enough sleep. The strange weight of silence in stone corridors for too many hours. But if you collect enough of them, patterns start to appear. People coming back with mirrored injuries, scrapes on the side they never fell on. People calling out the wrong names in their sleep. Names of people no one knows. Names they insist are familiar. A girl once returned from a family hike along the Narrows and refused to wear shoes for weeks. Said the river liked her feet. Said she didn't want to forget how it felt to walk like that. When asked what she meant, she simply said, "Like the other ones do." A park EMT recalled responding to a hiker who had collapsed at the Narrows trailhead. No obvious wounds, just disoriented and quiet. When asked his name, he responded with one not found on any ID. When asked again, he replied with the ranger's own name, then smiled. The ranger didn't sleep for days. Eventually transferred to another park. Never told anyone why. But it's not just the hikers. Sometimes, the stories say, it's the watchers. A trail cam set near the bend before the reflection pool once captured 14 hours of still footage. Nothing moved. No sound. Until, for precisely 3 minutes and 26 seconds, the frame shifted slightly, not because of wind, not from vibration, but as if something inside the image leaned forward. Not toward the camera, toward its own reflection in the water. The park technician who reviewed the footage quit the next day. Left a note in the equipment locker. "The canyon wants to leave. Through us." Rangers have a term, unofficial, quiet. Not on paper. Driftbackers. Hikers who return physically, but drift. Don't reattach. They often come back with their shoelaces tied differently. Sunglasses missing. Wounds that weren't there before, or scars they don't remember having. One man returned from the hike with a perfect circle of blisters around his ankle. He said his boot was too tight, but rangers found no sign of abrasion inside, and his boot size was suddenly a half-inch larger than on file. He explained it with a laugh. Must have always been wrong. But when he left, he walked like someone measuring each step against a different memory. Some believe the Narrows doesn't take people. It trades them, takes one back, leaves one behind. Not identical, not hostile, just slightly out of rhythm. And maybe that's worse, because you wouldn't notice immediately, not at first glance. You'd have to watch closely, to hear how their footsteps sound half a beat too soon, to feel the cold that enters the room with them, to see them blink slower than they used to, like they're still remembering how. Not all who return are lost, but not all who leave ever really left. The Narrows holds on to something. Your gait, your breath, your voice when you first whispered your name to the canyon walls. And when you walk back, you may not be walking in your own footsteps anymore, but some people did turn back, at the first chill, the first silence, the first reflection that didn't move quite right. They left the Narrows before it learned their shape. And what they carry now are the stories that warn the rest of us to listen. Not everyone who enters the Narrows disappears. Not everyone walks out changed. Some feel it early, before the silence thickens, before the water whispers their name. And they turn back. Their stories are not as loud, not as tragic, not as famous, but they're just as important. Because these are the ones who heard something and listened. In 2019, a high school teacher named Dev Patel led a weekend group hike with 3 former students, now grown, now friends. They entered the Narrows under a clear sky, early spring. They weren't reckless. They weren't spiritual seekers. They just wanted to reconnect, laugh, take photos, be reminded of the time they saw a mountain lion track together in freshman biology. But something shifted just an hour in. It wasn't the water or the light. It was the echo. They tried singing a familiar hiking song, the kind you belled out when the canyon amplifies it back, warm and wide. But this time, it didn't echo. The song fell flat, deadened, swallowed by the stone. Dev stopped first. His voice trailed off. Then one of the others said, quietly, "I feel like someone's listening." They turned around, left, didn't speak much on the way back. When asked later, Dev simply said, "I don't know what was waiting up ahead, but I know it wanted to be followed." Another hiker, Rachel Yin, a documentary sound technician, came to the Narrows in 2015 to record ambient audio for a film about American silence, natural silence, untouched by roads or human noise. She carried a parabolic mic, waterproof gear, and a state-of-the-art field recorder. She only made it 40 minutes in, not because of injury, because the mic started picking up something she couldn't hear with her ears. At first, it was just static, then layered murmurs, like dozens of people whispering under each other, too low to understand, too sharp to ignore. She stopped, removed her headphones. Silence. But when she played the recording back later, the whispering was still there. Then a voice. Clear. Soft. Male. It said, "Stop recording." She deleted the file. Flew home the next morning. These hikers, these Turnbacks, don't speak often. Not because they're afraid of mockery, but because the story never sounds finished. Because the thing they fled didn't chase. It didn't shout. It merely waited. And that stillness is harder to explain than any scream. A retired ranger named Pete Andrews tells the story of the only time he felt real fear in the Narrows. Not when a flash flood nearly swept his team downstream. Not when he lost radio contact for 6 hours during a thunderstorm. But on a calm morning, 2 decades ago, when he stepped into the water just past the canyon split. And everything went quiet. The river didn't burble. The wind didn't move. His footsteps didn't splash. And he felt, deeply, that something had noticed him. Not from ahead, from below. He stood there for 5 full minutes, holding his breath, unsure if he'd moved forward or the canyon had closed behind him. Then he turned and walked out. He never patrolled the Narrows again. When younger rangers asked why, he just said, "Because the canyon doesn't ask twice." Even in local town lore, you'll find fragments of these accounts. People who felt cold water around their knees when the air was warm. People whose shadows moved before they did. People who heard their names spoken by someone behind them, only to turn and find no one there. Some said they left because they weren't ready to face what the Narrows shows. Others say they didn't leave at all. They were sent out, like something deeper inside had looked at them and decided they weren't what it was looking for. One anonymous account, shared in an old trail forum, simply read, "I was about to cross the river near Wall Street. A shape stood on the far side, maybe a hiker, but it was perfectly still, too still. I blinked and it was gone. I didn't cross. I felt like I passed a test. No follow-up, no name, just those words. And for many who've been there, it was enough. Because sometimes the bravest thing isn't walking deeper. It's turning around. It's letting the canyon keep its silence. It's stories. It's shape-shifting shadows. It's understanding that not every whisper is meant to be followed. And not every echo is yours. These are the people who came home and kept the stories alive. Not in podcasts or police reports, but in fireside warnings. In quiet advice passed between travelers. In the uneasy laugh between strangers who both know they saw something. One said, "I knew I had to turn around when I couldn't remember why I'd come in." Another said, "It started counting my steps." Not out loud, just, I could feel it. And a third said, whispering, "My name felt wrong in my mouth." In a way, the Narrows respects the ones who leave. They become carriers of the warning. They speak the truth with no proof. Hold memory with no photograph. Leave before the canyon learns how to say their name in its own voice. Some trails reward courage. This one rewards restraint. Because the Narrows is not a place you conquer. It is a place you survive. But no matter how many leave, the Narrows remains. Silent. Still. Watching. It doesn't chase. It waits. And somewhere beneath the cold current, The canyon remembers every footstep, every name, every shadow that paused too long. Because the Narrows never forgets. There is no climax in the Narrows. No final scream. No monster emerging from the mist. No clean, satisfying end. Because the canyon is not a story. It is the thing that holds them. Every footstep placed in its waters. Every name whispered into its walls. Every flicker of motion in the corner of a photograph. It all stays. Somewhere beneath the layers of stone, the canyon keeps records. Not the kind you write, but the kind that echo. Patterns, rhythms, breaths. Even after the hiker leaves, the Narrows remembers how they walked. And sometimes, late at night, when the moon slices across the canyon mouth, the shadows still move in their shape. Park logs mention it rarely, but trail cam footage has caught them. Blips of motion in places with no trail access. Fog drifting upstream, against wind. I shine too high for deer, too low for mountain cats. In one file, timestamped just after midnight, a camera near the Temple of Sinawava showed a silhouette crouched beside the river, unmoving, for 6 minutes. Then it stood. Not with fluid motion, but as if being remembered. The file ends in static. The camera was found intact. The battery full, but the lens was turned inward. Old ranger journals, those kept before digital logging, speak of dreams. Recurring ones. Dreams where they return to the canyon mouth and find their own footprints waiting. Not faded, not aged, fresh, as if they'd just stepped into themselves again. One ranger wrote, "I dream I'm walking the Narrows, and I see someone ahead. Same height, same gear, same walk. They look back, and it's me, but I never made that face." He retired early, moved inland, refused to live near rivers again. Sometimes, the Narrows let something out. A voice in a voicemail that doesn't match the speaker. A reflection in a mirror that flinches before you do. A photo taken at home that, when flipped, shows the canyon walls behind you. These are fragments. Leavings. Not curses. Not hauntings. Just traces. Signs that the canyon is watching still. Not out of malice. Not even out of curiosity. But because it's what it does. It watches. And sometimes, it tries to understand. One hiker, a poet, wrote in her journal after leaving, "I don't think it wants to hurt anyone. I think it's lonely. I think it builds people out of silence and lets them walk a while." She never went back, but she left her boots outside her door every night, in case the other her needed to return. The last known entry in a 1951 Ranger logbook, signed by an unknown hand, reads, "The water runs, but it holds. The rock stands, but it listens. I fear it remembers us more than we remember each other." The entry has no corresponding shift assigned. No ranger by that name was ever listed. The logbook remains in archive storage, its final page water damaged, though no weather was recorded that day. Some say the page smells faintly of river clay. Others refuse to touch it at all. Today, the Narrows is still open. Thousands of hikers pass through each year. They take pictures, eat trail mix, splash each other in the current, laugh. Most leave with what they came for: beauty, silence, a memory. But every so often, one stops mid-hike, looks up, and says, "Did you hear that?" Or, "I thought I saw someone behind me." Or simply, "Let's turn back." And if they're lucky, they do. Because the Narrows isn't about getting lost. It's about being remembered. And if you linger too long, or speak your name too clearly, or leave too much of yourself in the water, the canyon might try to keep it, to rebuild you from stone and fog. And you might walk out again, but not entirely as yourself. So if you ever find yourself standing at the water's edge, if the canyon walls rise too fast, if the river turns too cold, if the silence feels heavy with breath, turn back. Don't wait for the voice. Don't chase the reflection. Don't count the steps too loudly. And above all, never walk in alone, because some trails guide you forward. But this one, it watches, and it remembers. If that gave you chills, like the video, share it with someone who sleeps with the lights off, and hit subscribe, or the next photo might have you in it. Tap the bell. The next story drops soon.